Back at the precinct, news spread like wildfire. The officers involved were called into emergency meetings. Questions flew: how did such a grievous error happen? How could they have failed to recognize a decorated military officer? And most importantly, why did it escalate to violence so quickly? Public officials demanded answers. The incident quickly moved beyond a simple traffic stop. It became a national conversation about race, authority, and the fragility of trust between communities and law enforcement. The fact that a woman who had dedicated her life to protecting the country was treated as a threat was a bitter irony no one could ignore. For the colonel, the ordeal was both a physical and emotional wound. She had faced dangers on battlefields overseas, but being targeted in her own country cut deeper than any enemy's bullet. Her resilience was tested in ways no training could prepare her for. Yet, even in pain, she remained steadfast, a symbol of strength and dignity amid injustice. The officers involved issued statements, their words careful, measured, regret mixed with defensiveness. But the community and the colonel's supporters knew the real story, that this was not just an accident or a misunderstanding. It was a stark example of how prejudice can blind even those sworn to protect. This revelation would trigger investigations, public outcry, and calls for reform. But for the colonel and her family, it was a painful reminder of the challenges still facing those who serve both in uniform and in everyday life. Her identity, once unknown, now became a rallying point for justice and awareness. The story quickly leapt from local headlines to national news outlets. Cameras flashed, reporters gathered, and social media exploded with the video footage of the shooting. Millions of people watched in disbelief as the scene replayed: a traffic stop gone horribly wrong, a black U.S. Army colonel shot by the very officers meant to protect her. Hashtags began trending. Hashtag justice for colonel, hashtag stop racial profiling, hashtag police accountability. The public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. People shared their stories, their fears, and their hopes for change. Across the country, protests sparked in cities big and small, demanding answers and justice. In the military community, the news was met with shock and concern. The U.S. Army released a statement condemning the incident and pledging full support for the colonel and her family. She is a decorated officer who has served with honor and distinction. Her service deserves respect, not violence, the statement read. The military's involvement underscored the gravity of the situation and highlighted the disturbing intersection of race and law enforcement. Meanwhile, the police department faced intense scrutiny. The officers involved were placed on administrative leave pending a thorough investigation. Internal Affairs launched a probe into the circumstances leading to the shooting, including why the officers failed to recognize the colonel's identity before escalating the situation. Community leaders and civil rights activists seized the moment to call for systemic reforms. Town halls were organized, discussions held about implicit bias training, de-escalation tactics, and the urgent need for better police accountability. The incident became a symbol of broader racial injustices embedded within the system. Social media, while a powerful tool for awareness, also became a battleground. Supporters of the police tried to justify the officers' actions, citing the split-second decisions officers must make. Others argued that no such decision justifies shooting an unarmed woman who complied with every command. The debate exposed deep divides but also forced a national reckoning with uncomfortable truths. In the community where the incident occurred, emotions ran high. Vigils were held in honor of the colonel's bravery and suffering. Neighbors, friends, and strangers alike came together, lighting candles and sharing stories of resilience. The streets that had witnessed violence now echoed with calls for peace and justice. For the colonel's family, the ordeal was heartbreaking. They struggled with her physical recovery and the emotional trauma of seeing her life nearly ended in an act of racial prejudice. But they also stood proud of her service, her strength, and her unwavering commitment to justice even in the face of danger. Politicians stepped into the spotlight, some expressing condolences, others pushing for new legislation to prevent similar tragedies. The shooting became a catalyst for broader conversations about race relations in America, policing reforms, and the protection of civil rights for all citizens. The case also prompted military officials to review protocols for how service members are treated during civilian encounters with law enforcement. The need for clearer communication between agencies became apparent, highlighting gaps that could put service members at risk. This incident, raw and painful, became a mirror reflecting society's struggles with race, power, and trust. It ignited conversations that could no longer be ignored and mobilized a wave of activism and awareness. Yet, amid the chaos, the colonel's story remained central, a reminder that behind every headline is a human being who deserves dignity, respect, and justice. Her experience was a call to action, a challenge to communities, law enforcement, and leaders to do better. As we wrap up this story, it's impossible not to feel the weight of what happened. A moment meant to be routine turned into a nightmare, a tragic reminder of how bias can twist even the simplest encounters into life-threatening situations. The Colonel's bravery, both in service and in surviving this ordeal, stands as a testament to strength in the face of injustice. Her story isn't just about one shooting, it's about a system that sometimes fails those it promises to protect. It's about the urgent need for empathy, accountability, and change. And it's about all of us, as individuals and as a society, recognizing that our voices matter in shaping a better future. Here on Tailcraft, we're dedicated to sharing stories that matter, stories that open eyes, challenge perspectives, and inspire action. If this video moved you, made you think, or sparked a conversation, please do us a huge favor. Like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to join our community. Have you ever experienced or witnessed something that changed how you view the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear from you. Remember, change starts with awareness, but it grows through action. The more we talk about these issues, the more pressure we put on institutions to evolve and improve. The Colonel's experience is a call to each of us to stand up against prejudice and injustice wherever we see it, whether it's on the streets, in the halls of power, or within our own hearts. Thank you for watching and for being part of this important conversation. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep telling the stories that matter. The night was quiet. The kind of stillness you'd expect on a stretch of rural highway just after midnight. A soft hum from the Colonel's SUV was the only sound, her headlights cutting through the darkness like a promise of getting home safely. But that promise shattered when red and blue lights exploded in her rearview mirror. License and registration, the officer barked before she could even fully roll her window down. His tone was sharp, unyielding, a command, not a request. She complied, steady hands passing him her documents, but something in his eyes said this wasn't about a broken taillight. This was about something else entirely. Welcome to Tailcraft, where we bring you the stories that shake us, challenge us, and remind us why the truth matters. If you're visiting us for the first time, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive. But before we get further, let me ask you this. If an ordinary traffic stop suddenly turned into a fight for your life, how would you handle it? Tonight's story is more than just another headline. It's about a woman who served her country with honor, a decorated U.S. Army colonel, finding herself on the wrong end of a gun during what should have been a routine stop. It's about how prejudice can turn the safest seeming moments into life and death struggles. And it's about the split-second decisions that leave scars far deeper than the wounds you can see. The facts are chilling. Pulled over without clear cause. Treated as a threat before being treated as a human being. And within minutes, a respected officer of the United States Army lay bleeding on the asphalt. The cops didn't know who she was. They didn't know her years of service, the medals she'd earned, the lives she'd saved. All they saw was the color of her skin. Why does this matter? Because it's not just her story, it's a reflection of something happening across America, to people who will never make the evening news. It's a reminder that bias, unchecked, can be deadly. And that the people sworn to protect and serve can sometimes become the very danger we fear. So let's start from the beginning. Let's step into her world, mile by mile, moment by moment, and see how a drive home became a national outrage. The Colonel slowed her SUV to a gentle stop on the gravel shoulder. Her training taught her to stay calm, to follow procedure. After all, she had commanded soldiers in far more dangerous situations than this. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, the cool leather pressing against her palms as she waited for the officer to approach. He didn't walk up like most officers did. His steps were fast, deliberate, and heavy, as if each one carried a charge of aggression. The beam of his flashlight cut across her face, lingering far too long, as if he were searching for something to justify the tension in his voice. "Step out of the vehicle," he demanded. No explanation. No standard courtesy. She hesitated just long enough to ask, "Is there a reason for the stop, officer?" Her voice was steady, controlled, professional. But that question seemed to ignite something in him. His jaw tightened. His hand rested on his holstered weapon. "Out. Now." The Colonel unbuckled her seatbelt slowly, narrating her movements, just as she had been trained to do during military traffic stop protocols. "I'm reaching for the door handle. I'm stepping out now." The night air was sharp against her skin, and the silence of the empty road only made the tension louder. Another officer appeared from the other side, this one younger, shifting nervously, hand hovering near his taser. The colonel glanced between them, sensing the escalation before it even happened. She placed her hands high, fingers spread. "I am complying," she said firmly. But in their eyes, compliance didn't seem to register. "Walk to the front of your vehicle," the older officer ordered. She moved as told, boots crunching on the gravel. The glare from the headlights burned her eyes, and for a moment she could only see their silhouettes. Then came another command, sharper, harsher. "Hands on the hood." She complied again, feeling the cold metal against her skin. And then, it happened. The younger officer shouted something she couldn't fully hear, something about a weapon. In the blur of adrenaline, she saw the older officer's arm rise, the muzzle of his gun catching the light. There was no warning shot. No time to explain. The crack of the gunshot split the night air, echoing into the emptiness. Pain seared through her side, knocking the breath from her lungs. Her knees buckled, gravel digging into her skin as she collapsed. Her mind screamed at her body to stay conscious. She could hear her own heartbeat, rapid and pounding in her ears. Somewhere above her, the younger officer was shouting, "What did you do?" Panic was replacing the aggression now. The older officer's voice wavered. She was reaching. But the colonel knew the truth, she hadn't moved except to obey. She pressed a hand to her wound, feeling the warm flood of blood beneath her fingers. From the darkness beyond the patrol car lights, a faint voice called out. A witness. Someone who had pulled over after seeing the flashing lights. "I saw it. She didn't do anything." The words cut through the chaos, but the damage was already done. The younger officer fumbled for his radio, calling for medical assistance, his voice cracking under the weight of what had just happened. The older officer stepped back, eyes darting between her and the approaching headlights of an ambulance. "You look pale now." The colonel's breathing slowed. Her vision blurred. And yet, through the haze of pain, she thought about the bitter irony. After years of protecting her country, it was her own protectors who had pulled the trigger. The ambulance lights cut through the night, painting the road in harsh reds and blues. Paramedics rushed to her side, working quickly to stabilize the colonel's bleeding wound. Despite the pain, she remained conscious enough to catch fragments of hurried conversations, the officers' voices heavy with confusion and growing dread. One of the younger officers, still shaken, fumbled through her purse and found a small, embossed card. It was a military ID, stark, official, commanding respect even in the dim glow of the emergency lights. She's a colonel," the officer whispered, disbelief dripping from his words. The older officer's face drained of color. His confident posture crumbled into something raw and vulnerable. A man confronted with the weight of his mistake. "We didn't know," he stammered, the reality settling like a stone in his chest. The bravado that had filled the earlier moments was gone, replaced by silence and regret. Word traveled quickly. Soon, a military representative arrived at the scene, their presence shifting the atmosphere. They knelt beside her, offering words of reassurance as she was carefully loaded onto the stretcher. The fact that she was a high-ranking officer added an undeniable gravity to the situation. Witnesses who had gathered started murmuring, some filming, others expressing shock and outrage. "How could they shoot someone like her?" one asked, voice trembling. Another replied, "If they'd only known who she was." But the truth was they hadn't. Their actions had been clouded by something far more dangerous: bias.